You're listening to the Bird Dog Babe podcast with my mom, Courtney Bastion.
I think dogs are capable of doing all. It's not unusual for many, and certainly not for myself, to be going through the field trial season, which is always usually the spring and fall. But before hunting season, I'll take them to trials, and then hunting season will start, and then I'll go take them hunting, and I don't have them do the same things in hunting as I do at field trials. In other words, I do keep them in a little closer, and they know to do that. And I also don't keep them steady for the fall and wild bird hunting. But then I can take them, say I want to go to California and run some field trials in November. I'll load them up and take them down there, and they'll just revert right back to field trial dogs. They have the capability of doing any and all, and people limit themselves sometimes, and I don't think that's the case with the dog. Not all can do it, but most can do it.
Hey, bird dog babes. My name is Courtney Bastion, and I am obsessed with all things bird dogs. And I'm here with you to share the stories, experiences, knowledge, and opinions from the women and a few guys in the industry that are killing it. I'm a Wisconsin girl living in a Montana world. I'm mom and two incredible kiddos, wife and occasional assistant to a pro gun dog trainer, traveling the U.S. talking about canine nutrition while hunting, breeding, and competing with my German Wirehaired Pointers and Bracco Italianos. As someone who started hunting later in life because I wanted to give my dogs the opportunity to do what they were bred to do, I'm here to help inspire, educate, and connect women to get their bird dogs out in the field and experience a bond like no other. So pour yourself a glass of wine and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. This is the Bird Dog Babe podcast. Big welcome to my new Patreon patrons, Jennifer Culliford, Bethany Wiltshire, Jill Corin, and Crystal Vale. And my Patreon patrons are going to get a live video evaluation on structure of our 8-week-old German Wirehaired Pointer puppies on this Thursday, September 10th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. That my mentor that has been helping us grade our puppies for at least the past 10 years is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about structure and how important it is for the working bird dog. And to celebrate my first turkey that I harvested this last week, I'm going to be giving away one of my Bird Dog Babe Turkeys Are Dicks t-shirts to anybody that contributes to the podcast, whether it be writing a review, sharing it on Instagram or Facebook, or submitting a suggestion for an episode or a guest speaker. I met Meg Eden of Wireswest Kennel in Oregon at a German Wirehaired Pointer National a couple years after I got into the breed. At the time, we had very different types of dogs, and as the past 15 years have evolved, we find ourselves with similar goals, ideas, and dogs. There aren't many women I know that get after bird hunting as much as Meg, and there aren't many people in general that breed, own, and train dogs that can do and excel at it all: hunting, conformation, field trials, hunt tests, and NAVHDA. Meg has shared so much knowledge with me in the past several years, and I'm excited for listeners to get this opportunity to hear from her as well. I can tell you, getting her on here wasn't easy in several aspects, but I'm grateful she is. She shares a lot of great advice worth writing down and keeping it where you won't lose it. Okay, let's get after it. Thank you to sponsor Dakota 283. Unparalleled protection for traveling to and from your favorite hunting spot. Dakota 283 kennels are a premium quality roto-mold with recessed handles on top for convenient and safe tie-down, and makes it easy to lift up into the truck. I love the secure door frame with high security locks, so I know my dogs are safe when I need to stop for fuel. An added bonus is the drain hole in the back, which makes cleaning a breeze when your dog has been run hard and put away wet. Head over to Dakota283.com and use promo code Bird Dog Babe for a 10% discount. Thanks to sponsor Excel Shooting Sports, elite dealer of Cesar Guarini, Fab Arm, and Siren shotguns. Siren is the world's only full line of shotguns created for the female competitor, hunter, and shotgun enthusiast. Excel is one of only 4 demo centers west of the Mississippi. They give you the opportunity to actually try out a gun before you walk out the door with it. As an elite dealer for Cesar Guarini, Excel offers their customers unlimited pit stops of free service and tune-ups on all shotguns, a great way to have your gun in top condition for the upcoming hunting or target season. In addition, they're offering an exclusive deal to all of the Bird Dog Babe listeners for a free gun slip with each purchase, a $90 value. Meg Eden, we need to try to keep this to 1 hour. Are we going to be able to successfully do that?
I'm going to focus. Yep.
Okay. What I want to dig in subject with you in this episode is talking about, first of all, kind of where you got started with bird dogs and hunting. Is this something that you grew up doing?
No, I did not come from any serious hunting family background at all. Something I picked up after college, after my degree in wildlife management. So, yeah, my father was in the military. And so I grew up on air bases all over the country, abroad in the United States, coast to coast. And though we joined the gun clubs on base, we never could take it any further than that till after my dad retired, after college, and then when I could really actually have a dog.
So what age was it that you got started?
Oh my goodness! Then I'm going to tell you my age.
Oh no, or just say, okay, give us a time period.
How about if I just said in my 20s, in my mid 20s,
Okay.
After college, after I got kind of an education about hunting and game management, and it all began to make a lot of sense. Started getting my dogs, and I just ran with it.
Were the wire hairs your first bird dogs?
No, I had other pointing breeds, though I'm not sure they pointed and I'm not sure they retrieved, and that was always a bonus if they did. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until, honestly, when I got into the German Wirehaired Pointers that I took it to a different level. And it was probably in the late 1990s, 97, when I got my first wire hair. And it was no turning back after that.
And something cool about you that I think is neat to note for listeners is you were the first woman biologist in Oregon, right?
In the wildlife section, yeah. So it was not unusual to go to an annual meeting statewide and have 100 guys in the room and me.
Did you have a hard time getting listened to, or were you pretty good at taking that role and going with it?
Well, once the old guys retired, it became a lot easier. That generation kind of faded through. They were real confused to why I was there as well. And I just wanted to start from the ground up. When all that affirmative action came around in the 80s and 90s, I didn't want to shortcut it that way, my career that way. I really wanted to do the same thing they had to do in their careers to get where they were. And I think it built a lot of respect for that once they realized that. And I just kind of blended in. And then a few more women came along, and a few more, and it's still not even Steven, but it's a lot better where it was. And, you just found different ways to perform the same job.
Did your role in that position, do you feel that it helped play a hand in your interest building in the bird dogs?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not sure I would have ever turned into a hunter if I hadn't been, but it was a whole new learning experience. As they always say, your education really begins in your field after you get out of college and get into the field and start applying what you learn in college into the real world. That's when your education really begins.
Did your position Or how did your position relate starting hunting?
Well, my serious interest in bird hunting just developed because of the dogs. It's just a lot of fun when you're hunting behind a dog. And I'm not so sure I would be as fun as if I was hunting with somebody else's dog or without a dog. And probably my greatest enjoyment is taking out young pups out into the field for their first experience. So that's what really generates my interest, far greater than hunting big game, which I did a lot of in the past. But upland waterfowl hunting really took over, and I'm most positive it's because it's all about the dog and watching the dog work.
Did you do all the training yourself with your first dog?
I did, and I have to say it takes a couple of dogs to be able to go through. The first couple dogs, you make a lot of mistakes. So it was a learning process, and thank goodness I had dogs that were pretty forgiving. But when I used to hunt my older dogs, the short hairs, the Springer Spaniels and so forth, they weren't, they probably had the genetics. I just didn't have the knowledge how to bring out the best in them. And it was I was never really invited back, because of my dogs. So I wanted to really have better trained dogs that I knew. I wanted to learn more about it. So I spent a lot of my vacation time working, because I did have a full 3-decade career, but I spent a lot of my vacation times going to dog training seminars, visiting with people, getting one-on-one with professional trainers, and just learning more about it. Never in my slightest interest that I think I'd ever compete dogs. I just wanted them to become better hunting dogs that people wanted to hunt with me with, if I ran across them in the fields, dogs that behaved, and just makes it a more enjoyable experience.
Right. And how many dogs were you into it, Meg, until you started competing and testing, I should say?
Really, my first one. My first wire hair in 1997. Yeah.
And which dog was that?
That was Jessie.
Yeah.
That was Jessie.
What did you all do with her?
I just ran her in Master Hunter, just trying to learn how to have a better obedient dog. And I got more into field trialing about 2 or 3 years after that, only because it was local. I would always drive by it when I was out working, and I would see there was field trial ground in my district area that I worked. And so I'd always drive by, and I'd always go, wonder what they're doing with those dogs and horses. And thought it was kind of a crazy idea because it was just so foreign to me. And I drove by them for quite a few years until I decided to stop in and find out what the heck they're doing. I just found it was a different game to play with your dogs. So I went that direction because the locality and the ease of falling right into it. I didn't even have to go look for it. It was just right there for me to play around with.
Did you have the horses already?
I did have the horses. So instead of when my dad got out of the military, instead of we couldn't even have a dog, I got really involved in horses. So horses came first. So it just seemed like a natural flow. Then the dogs came, and then seeing these field trialers out there with horses. I mean, how great of a deal is that? You can pursue an activity involving both. So I thought that was kind of cool. And that's probably what led me there. I didn't go there thinking that I was going to have a great hunting dog as a result of it. It was just something to do the other 8 months out of the year when you couldn't go hunting.
So what was your first stake you ran? Do you remember?
Probably Derby stake was probably the very first stake. And It kind of bit me a little because I had some success with it and it felt good. And I thought, wow, okay, I've got some pretty smart dogs. I have the world's smartest dogs. So I got hooked. And it was a long learning process. Believe me, you don't, but it was a hard group to get into. back then, there were some women doing it, but there weren't a lot. But I kind of already had that background pursuing my career and working in the field it was male dominated. So there was just a bunch of, nice old crusty guys out there that were willing to, help me along, and then more women came into it. There were a few at the time, but I didn't see many of them. And that didn't scare me off. It's just a different game to play with your dog, field trialing. You don't go in there thinking that what you are doing is training a really high caliber class hunting dog. I call them basically gaming dogs. It was just a fun sport to do with your dog. It didn't have a whole lot to do with hunting, seriously. But it did teach some skills to your dogs to become better at hunting.
You've hunted off horseback, though, with your dogs, haven't you? Like, you've actually hunted with them?
I didn't. I always hunted in areas that had too much fencing. And you'd have to lower fences down, and it wasn't really conducive here in Oregon to do that. I know there's other states that are probably great for that.
I think we should give that a try.
I know, except the problem is that most of my hunting's always been chukar hunting, and it's a slippery slope and a lot of loose shale rock, and it's not a place I want to be on a horse. Perhaps a mule, but not a horse.
Right. Yeah, that wouldn't be ideal. Is chukar hunting your favorite?
It always has been. As I get older, it's more challenging. Its body parts start to fail. But right now I'm fighting a knee issue, but as soon as I get that replaced, I plan on getting back on those steep slopes.
Are you still doing field trials here and there?
Yes, I still field trial. I maintain my judging license, and I have an upcoming 16-month-old puppy that I am real excited to get back into field trialing. Not all dogs can play the game of field trialing. It takes a certain type of dog that wants to do it. And even some of the top field trial dogs, after so many years, get bored with it. So it's a different game to play. And I've kind of gotten more interested in testing for the versatile dog, which the wire hair is. And AKC, American Kennel Club, just doesn't bring out that side of the water side of these versatile breeds. So I wanted to pursue a different organization to train for that.
Meg, what characteristics do you feel are ideal and necessary that you could see in a young dog that would have potential to go through that horseback field trial circuit?
A lot of independence, but yet cooperation. It has to be a dog that is going to reach those objective limits, but yet are cooperative enough to work with you and stay with you and not continue, a straight path the opposite direction. So they need to work with you. They need to be on those outer reaches and with that independence to want to be able to run and run hard and yet find game and be honest on that game. And it takes a lot to put that together for a dog to do that, particularly when you're working with a breed that isn't known to be able to have that independence or range distance that they travel compared to other breeds that you're competing with, such as the English pointer, the short hair. They tend to have been bred to have more distance and independence.
And you've personally bred and owned how many field champions?
I have 10 championship titles on my dogs.
And you've won how many nationals?
Oh, just one. But it was a good way to kind of go out and phase out a little as I went into NAVHDA. But I have about 11 national placements, of which 7 of them were runner-ups. You get close, but not quite close enough. But 2016 was a great year.
Yep. So several of those dogs, though, you have also run in AKC Hunt tests. You do
Yes.
conformation with the majority or all of them. How many of your field champions are also dual champions?
5.
Okay. And
one
so,
of them I didn't. One I did not own. I just campaigned. Belonged to a very good friend. So
okay. But you've done an amazing job at keeping the breed, the German Wirehaired Pointer, as an all-around dual dog and versatile dog, maintaining the structure as well. And the temperaments on your dogs are phenomenal. So now that you've kind of made this, I don't want to say change because you're still doing it all, but you have more of the interest in the NAVHDA side you mentioned. And are you breeding any differently?
I don't feel I am. I breed based on temperament, overall ability, and really what it is I think dogs become who they become the way they're raised, and I try to bring out the side that the dog themselves are more suited for doing. I don't want a whole kennel full of field trial dogs, but yet those same field trial dogs are incredible pheasant dogs in Montana that do not run off. They hunt that heavy hard cover and they stay right with me. So dogs can learn to use the different terrain and vegetation type. I'm looking for a dog. I try to breed dogs that have that type of temperament and personality that can handle all those different situations. I am trying to breed into my lines perhaps a little more of the German side to bring in the coat and the bone and the great tracking abilities. But putting two dogs together, as you know, as a breeder, it's always a surprise,
Mm-hmm.
good and bad,
Right. Are you noticing any different characteristics with puppies in the recent litters than you have of those in the past?
Probably not. Probably more in more correctness to their conformation and coat.
Okay.
But I do expect a 6-7 week old puppy to point. If they don't point, and I'm not talking about sight pointing on a wing, I'm talking about a live bird in cover. I try to breed for puppies that will do that from the get-go, all natural instinct. That's really super important because these puppies go into homes that people might be their first time bird dog, and you really need to start off with that innate ability of those dogs to perform like that. It makes it easier for the new puppy owners to have a dog that does that. As a matter of fact, they tend to always think after that that's how they're supposed to always be. Sometimes it's easier to bring out those traits and sometimes it's harder depending on the various lines of dogs and breeds. I just try to put something on the ground that's going to start doing the job with its natural talent.
You raise your puppies kind of to uniform, would you say, where at how many weeks old are you introducing them to birds? How old are they?
When they get their first bird, they're usually about 4 weeks old. It's
Okay.
usually a dead bird, and it's in a pen with a bunch of puppies. Their first live bird they see at 5 to 6 weeks old.
You're letting them just play around with it, or are you doing anything to try help those to see where those pointing instincts are?
When they get the dead bird, it is more of just to turn it on, to flip the switch. And then when I start bringing in live bird, I'm a real firm believer in not using a wing and teaching a dog to sight point. It may look good to people that are coming out to look at your puppies, but you're really teaching them, in my mind, a bad habit. So I work with live birds in the grass, in the cover, and let them explore that. It is nice if you can get them into wild birds at a young age too. And I think the sooner the better, and especially when they're in a group as a litter versus individually, it makes it so much easier for anybody coming along wanting a puppy that they've had all that previous exposure.
And with bird types, so are you doing pigeons at 4 weeks?
I usually start off with bob whites and then maybe half-grown chucker, because the chucker can be bigger than the puppy. So, and I bring in pigeon because I think that oftentimes when people want to train, if they focus just on game birds and they don't have any prior pigeon experience, some dogs don't look at pigeons as real birds. So, and those are cheaper birds for people to train with, and they have their place for training dogs. They're pretty important. So I try to expose them to all that. And when they're 6 weeks old, they're loaded up in the back of my truck in 2 crates, and I take them, start getting them used to vehicles, and I travel and I go take them out to areas where they can get into the field and into water, starting at 6 weeks.
Being from field trials, you prefer a higher tail on a dog. Is that something, well, I should say in that sport, that's very preferred. Is that something that you continue to carry over as something that's appealing to your eye?
I wish I could shake that, but you're right. That's true. I like the high head, high tail. And probably that is from the field trial world. And that probably is one of the things the field trialers did to reshape breeds of all sporting pointing dogs, which is probably not the best. The German wire hairs have a lower tail set. That's their conformation. That's probably the true conformation for the American German Wirehaired Pointers. But I tend to like that high tail. It's something you can see over the sagebrush. It's something that can't be mistaken for anything else that dog is doing out there. When you see that tail come up and that head come up, it's pretty exciting. No disrespect for the other type of tail sets. It's probably something I learned and carry over from field trialing that I just can't help not get excited about.
I think personally, from us coming from the other venue of starting out in NAVHDA and then years later to starting to dabble into field trials, it gave us more of an appreciation for that kind of look as well. It's nothing, I wouldn't say where the tail is sitting on point is something I really looked at much before we started dabbling in field trials and knowing how important it was there. But now just out hunting, I agree with you. I just think it's something I really appreciate seeing. Not necessarily the 12 o'clock isn't the tail for me by any means. For those that appreciate that, that's cool. I see where you like that, but I like the tail like more around like a 10 o'clock.
Sure.
Where it's up, 10, 11-ish, where it's up a little bit like that. But I do think that's part of the enjoyment in hunting over these dogs is seeing that picture that's pleasing to our eye.
And I hope I used the term right. I did say high tail. I really don't think there is very many, if any, wire hairs out there that have a true 12 o'clock tail like the English pointer. But I do believe, although you put it side by side, a dog with a lower head set and then tail set with a dog with the opposite, they probably could hold their own. And most hunters don't care. I think that's the competitive side. But I do believe a high head on a dog enables them to have better scenting abilities. I think that they can reach out a little further. And because when I do find my dogs with their head up, they are reaching out there several more yards than a dog with its head lower to the ground. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I think any pointing dog that points is a great dog to have.
Yeah. It's
just a bias that I, developed over the last couple decades. And I'm trying hard to, and I'm doing better. I have some dogs now that do not have those high tails. And they're great hunting dogs.
Yeah. I don't think, why, what do you mean? You're trying to like purposely not try to have that
I
now?
don't,
Not prefer it?
they catch my eye, but there's more to the dog. There's a lot of parts and pieces, and I'm finally learning. And I mean, it's a continual learning thing. If you think you're at the top of your learning curve, then you have stopped learning, and you need to refocus because you plateau. But there's a lot more pieces to a dog than that. There's so much more to consider. And it's just another phase of me learning. You know, I may plateau, and then I find that I know nothing, and it's time to start learning more. So,
well, I think I see where you are with that aspect of it. It's like when you're choosing puppies. So I don't know how long ago I met you, Meg. I don't remember what year that was in California, but
2003.
Oh, no, it wasn't 2003.
2006.
Okay. It's like, I didn't get my first wire here till 2004.
I remember you as cute as a button, and you had some orange strands and maroon strands in your hair. It was really adorable. I remember that.
I don't. You have a good memory. Mm-hmm. So when you were choosing puppies before, was that high tail a priority in your choosing?
Yeah, but I didn't have it in my first dog. It was something I picked up, and I do when I look at my litters. The dog that tends to do that. Mm-hmm. But really, what's most important is the intensity, and it really doesn't matter where that tail is if a dog's intent. I mean, you almost forget to shoot your gun because it's such an awe to see. That's so exciting. So yeah, if you get a personal choice, if you get a choice between the two, I tend to go to that. Yes, the higher tail. Mm-hmm. But it should never limit you.
Can you have a high tail with a low intense dog?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially one that's been ruined, or not ruined, but probably trained not to its best advantage. But
okay.
But not often. But when I'm training a dog, and William can probably concur to this, is I just watch that tail, and that tells me everything I need to know what that dog's thinking about when you're out training. I'll look at the eyes when I'm in the front and the tail from the back. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if it's high or low, but it does tell you what it's doing when you are bringing on some kind of training exercise about pressure and if it's ready for it. So it's kind of a handy tool. If you start out high, then you can go low.
Yeah, you know? From reading the tail, is that what you're saying?
Yes, from reading the tail.
Yeah,
the tail tells all.
So when you're personally raising your own puppies, ones that you're keeping from a litter, are you doing anything different now? Play more in the versatile in the NAVHDA organization than you were doing when you were raising them to being applied better for field trials? Yes.
Much more water work, retrieving. Retrieving okay. is very huge. If you can bring that retrieving out without having to do a lot of force retrieving, that's great. More water exposure, and this is crazy, but much more obedience. Okay. Not having them pull you around. I mean, what a joy it is to go jump shoot ducks with a dog that's heeling by your side without even being on a rope. And when you stop, they stop. You don't have a dog out front blazing the trail and flying the ducks. And so you try to bring a little more connection with the dog. I do with the puppies, a little more connection. I used to not worry about that. I always figured when they're older, I'll bring that in because I was afraid that I would shorten up the dog too much. And I think dogs are capable of doing all. It's not unusual for many, and certainly not for myself, to be going through the field trial season, which is always usually the spring and fall, but before hunting season, I'll take them to trials, and then hunting season will start, and then I'll go take them hunting, and I don't have them do the same things in hunting as I do at field trials. In other words, I do keep them in a little closer, and they know to do that. And I also don't keep them steady for the fall and wild bird hunting. But then I can take them, say I want to go to California and run some field trials in November. I'll load them up and take them down there, and they'll just revert right back to field trial dogs. They have the capability of doing any and all, and people limit themselves sometimes, and I don't think that's the case with the dog. Not all can do it, but most can do it.
But do you think if you put too much obedience into them, that would take out some of that independence and run?
Oh yeah, it's a fine line, and sometimes you step over it, and then you've got to figure out how to fix that. I have a great big running dog out in the big open country, but I wanted to take her through NAVHDA, so I started back planting birds, putting on a little weight, shortening her up, and in essence, I took out her search. So I had to go back and fix that. So you mess around with them too much, and you will cause some other problems that you hadn't anticipated. But I think you can find that fine line. What people that have a problem with that are probably not used to the whole independent idea of a pointing breed. Maybe they're more familiar or comfortable with maybe a retriever type dog that is more what I call instructional dog. You don't want to take that spirit out of a pointing dog. So you want to keep them interested in exploring and hitting those objectives, so you don't have to go climb every mountaintop. But yeah, there is a fine line, and once in a while I've stepped on it.
And even going into reverse there. So you were just talking about how you're bringing a dog in. Have you been able to,
No.
take a closer working or a really obedient dog and be able to push it out?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've never been very successful. I often rode my dogs. I free range them when I rode them out on 2-track roads out in the middle of nowhere, and I'll put them with other bigger dogs. But it doesn't seem to work so well going that way. It's easier to rein them in. It's a lot harder to push them out. But again, it falls back to what I said earlier. Those dogs become what they become when you hand them over at 8 weeks old. That the personalities, a lot that they develop, I mean, there's a lot of genetic in there as well, but what people do with those dogs. And I learn a lot of this when I see puppies later, when they're a year old or 2 years old, with their new owners.
When you're sending puppies home with the new owners, like, what is some of the single most important advice that you are telling them immediately to do with those puppies?
Well, I tell them they need to get them out and expose them. Their first year they can't do much wrong. And you do have to worry about that, the first 3 vaccinations before you really expose them and socialize them with a lot of strange dogs. Or you shouldn't do that at all, really. But they really need to get out and start hiking with these dogs, take them around people. And as soon as you get the vaccinations completed, they're 4 months old, start really getting these dogs out and letting them make mistakes and not get on their case for making mistakes. And their first hunting season is the same way. They need not to expect a polished, finished, top-notch bird dog on their first hunt out. They're going to make a lot of mistakes, and that's just the way it's going to go. If they hunt enough, it will iron out.
What are your thoughts of a young dog's first season on birds? Are you shooting birds for them if they're not pointing?
They just need to slow down. I used to tell people, make sure they're on this established point, but sometimes that's hard to get. I've taken enough puppies now to realize that I got to be happy with the fact that they stop and recognize. I'm not going to shoot at a bird that's a dog's on a full run chasing behind. But if they take a brief stop and they're kind of sorting and analyzing, that's the time not to miss a bird.
I'm thinking of how difficult it's been this last week in grouse hunting, though. Like it's not even of how many birds you're putting in your vest. It's just the difficulty level and not even being able to see the dog in that thick cover to know if they're pointing or not.
Oh, I don't know how you guys do it. I mean, I've only grouse hunted a handful of times and found that to be I thought chukar hunting was tough because the heat, the terrain, the loose rock, all of that. Well, I'll tell you, I think forest grouse hunting is a huge challenge all on its own.
It is.
In many, many different levels. But boy, to have that dog doing that's pretty incredible. And you know what? They can all do it. It's just that I just don't have that kind of grouse numbers around here. We've got the forest, we just don't have the birds. And so I've kind of neglected that area.
I'm going to give the dogs a break. I'm going to head out east here either tonight or tomorrow morning and go look for some sage grouse.
Tell me, have you taken your dogs out for sage grouse before?
I haven't. No.
Well, I'll tell you, my experience is when they first encounter those birds, they're a little bit confused as to what they are. And so don't be surprised. But I was fortunate enough that I did a lot of sage grouse let counting when I was working in part of my job. Tough job, huh? But I would take my dogs with me and they'd locate these let grounds, which was great. But I can remember when they first see them, it's a little bit of they're a little surprised.
So what are they doing? What should I look for?
Well, I mean, the dogs themselves are pretty surprised on the birds.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but they are. They don't even take them, at least my experience is they don't take them as serious. They didn't know that that's a target species that you're looking for. And they kind of like, well, there's something big out there, but they figure it out pretty fast. So
is it
don't
like
be
a
surprised.
Hesitation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's not bad. You know, I mean, they figure it out, but it's kind of a surprise. I mean, for some reason they can handle a big goose over a duck, but going to sage grouse is a little different.
Interesting.
And in your state, you can sage grouse hunt
till the end of
dogs.
September.
And it's like turkey hunting. You know, I mean, in the fall we can turkey hunt with dogs here, but not in the spring. But have you had your dogs hunting turkeys?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, I don't even know how people do that.
I don't even have success hunting turkeys myself, Meg. Actually, I did just get my first turkey a couple days ago, but it's not something I'm going to brag about because, you know, I put in the time and the effort of strategizing and sitting in the cold blind and watching endless hours of YouTube trying to learn how to turkey call. And no joke, we were stacking 500 bales of hay, and all of a sudden 25 turkeys just start walking across our driveway. And I did feel like I don't know, stealthy. I snuck up to my truck and I grabbed my shotgun and I went down deep into the woods and
and they were laughing at you.
Yeah, they started chirping. You know, they sensed I was down there. I heard them start chirping, and I looked up, and there was one strutting, and you know, one shot, and I had my turkey. But
well, congratulations.
Oh, well, thanks. I know. I just feel like it's not real brag-worthy though, because it wasn't the typical setting I have always seen myself in for my first turkey.
Yes.
But my husband's like, "You're in a white tank top down there, and your flip-flops."
If you hadn't told the world about that, you could embellish over the years that you earned that right. You know, but you're the greatest turkey story I've heard from you, and it's the greatest. Your listeners have got to hear this. When you first moved there and you went on a turkey hunt, and your son was so excited to go that he was going to go, you and him, that he slept in his turkey clothing. So when he got up, he was already dressed, and he was so excited to go. And you guys hiked and hiked day after day. That was so great.
Yeah. Yeah, he likes to go with, but he's also very humbling as well. When I was doing the turkey calling, he's like, Mom, how come it sounds like the turkey's getting further away every time you do that?
That's true. Yeah, I remember that part too. But I wasn't going to say that. I hope you have a lot of success with your sage grouse. It's like eating a big duck. So be prepared.
Well, so how do you like to have your sage grouse?
On somebody else's dinner plate.
Okay. So
well, I know there's good ways to make it, but
okay.
I'm still working on it. When I find something, if you find something, you let me know. Go for the young of the year. I think it's a little more palatable.
Yeah.
I probably just never had it prepared right. That's probably my issue.
Maybe is it because it's the dark meat? So I'm told, like, don't overcook it, which basically hardly cook it is the answer, is what I'm learning.
I'm sure it's what they eat, because some of the dark meat birds are very good. Hungarian partridge, oh my goodness, that's probably my most favorite. Mm-hmm. Doves is right there with sage grouse, just a smaller form of it. But people tell me that they've had great meals with those. So I don't know. I just got to maybe come in.
And even in their kind of habits of, like, the young ones are getting up first, and like the big, more mature birds are popping up last when you are getting into a covey.
Okay.
Is that what you found yourself? That's what, when William was out that way a couple weeks ago, he said that's what they were doing. The young ones were popping up first, and those are going to be the ones that are going to taste better anyway. I'm
kind of guessing that could be the case. I've done so little sage grouse hunting. I've usually been, my involvement with sage grouse has always been in the springtime when they're on their breeding grounds, and there aren't any young like that. I mean, it's true. The ones that are doing the males that are doing the heaviest displaying are the last to leave if they get spooked. But
okay.
The young of that year, the males are always competing, trying to get that spot that there's only a few of. So
every year you have this amazing hunting trip planned. So what are your plans for this year?
Similar. Heading to the Big Sky Country. Hopefully not minus 20 degrees like last year on the first day. Yes, when the North Pole was warmer. And then perhaps going over to North Dakota or South Dakota, make a lap around and end up in Nevada. And then perhaps come home and then later go down south into the cactus and snakes.
Oh, what are you going to go for down south?
Quail in
Arizona.
Quail. Mm-hmm.
Did you do that last year?
No, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
We usually have to come home and thaw out pipes and take care of winter problems. But
when are you going to be heading to Montana?
Usually go late October. People get excited. I let all the excited people go first that come from out of state. They like to be there right at opener, and the birds are more dispersed, and it's hot on the dogs, and they can't get to all the spots because of the water levels. And I usually like to go there in November, but I wanted to go a little early to hunt more ducks as well. I mean, we have ducks in Oregon, but that just kind of adds to it. Kind of my new thing that comes with the whole NAVHDA thing. Now that I have dogs that hunt ducks well, can search for ducks, wounded ducks, it's a lot more fun. And again, to watch the dogs. You know, we eat what we shoot, but it is fun getting there.
Yeah. And I don't think you're off by any means by waiting a while, because if Eastern Montana is anything like it's been here, they're just, I don't know if they had a late hatch or what, but they're really young, immature birds. The tails on these rough grouse are pretty short. I've never seen them that short, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
maybe a second attempt nesting, or
I don't know. I don't
a colder
know.
spring to get them going, or something like that. What kind of
Could
grouse?
have been.
What do you mostly got? Rough, blue in
The rough, yeah, the rough is what we've been hunting this last week, and it's really odd. They're not even in the spots that they've been last year, or that we've even been scouting them out in the earlier season. They're not in those honey hole spots that they are always in. Even Duskies, this time last year when we moved here, we got into them right away, and they hit that spot. I didn't go up that day, but a friend and William went up, and none were up there. So it's kind of odd.
So when he hunts those, are they flying from tree limb to tree limb, or are they on the ground flying up, or?
They're on the ground flying up.
Okay.
Yeah, just like rough grouse. So they're on the ground popping up.
Okay. Huh. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's something I must try.
It is. What kind of makes or breaks grouse hunting, rough grouse, I should say, is, the dogs that can get into the thick of things. Like I took my older female Bronco on the second day, and I should have just known better not to take her, because she doesn't like obstacles. She's a very, open grass plains dog, and then she works really nice, but get her into some thick brush and she was on the back of my heels. And so it was a short hunt because I just got annoyed.
Just sounds like a smart dog that's going to have you open the trails up for her.
I mean, I can't say I felt any different from her. I'm usually the person that likes to walk the 2-track while wait for my dog to go in and pop the birds out. So I get where she's coming from. We are one and the same, but when I'm taking Stasha out, Stasha, I can just say get in, and she'll get in that thick cover and gets the job done. I think that's why I've been hunting her so much this week, that it's nice. But it definitely is a different kind of dog for that kind of hunting. One that I just think the wire hairs and the draughts are so ideal for that, because they don't really hesitate to just break through brush when they need to, and that's where you enjoy those meat dogs.
Especially, and I can relate to that with the cattails for pheasants. Yeah, you really need them to go in there and work that cover and work it hard.
Yep, exactly. It's the same thing, because those things are thick and tough.
Yep. I'm hoping we can join up and do some hunting like we've done before. That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. That's still I think that's one of my favorite hunts. How many birds we got into that time. And
Oh yeah.
That awesome shot that you had from the top of the cliff up there.
Oh.
That was one of my favorites, when the dog was down in the canyon. It was cool because I was on my way down there to work it, and the bird had already gotten up, and you took that shot. I watched her climb up that cliff all the way up to you to give that retrieve in hand. I think I even got a picture of that.
I do remember that, and I remember you cussing me out because you said I took your shot.
That sounds about right. Not that I'm competitive at hunting or anything.
Oh my gosh. Don't let it get away. Yeah, that was funny.
It was funny.
That was funny.
It was. But then you remember when you tried to make it up to me on that next one, when she went on point, and you're like, Courtney, come in. She's on point. So I get up, I get all up in there, and I'm even like ready. I'm mounted, I think. And then and then all of a sudden you yell, hen.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We need more of those days. Yep.
We do.
The longer the dog stays on point, the more likely it's going to be a hen. So that's
true.
That we should have saw that one coming.
Mm-hmm. It was just the excitement.
Well, I'm going to be. I want to show you some new pups and show you what they're capable of doing. It's pretty fun because you have the other half of the ingredients to this litter, and it's pretty exciting.
I'm excited to hunt over them. Do you have any good advice for somebody that is going to be hunting with their puppy for the first time this fall? One more. You gave some good ones. You have one good overall.
Just get out. A lot of people, they get that pup, they get all their gear, they get ready, they just don't do it. It doesn't become a priority, and it is really important. I mean, I really believe that first season is huge for a dog. And of course, you do want to make sure you've done your gun sensitivity before you head out. Yes, there are people that don't do that, and that's not fair to the dog to have any prior exposure. But I really think it's important for the dog to it's just like kids. They learn things so much faster and easier when they learn to do it as a kid than as when you pick up that same concept as an adult. And not that your dog's not going to be as good, it maybe isn't going to be as good as it could have been having that earlier prior experience. Right. But just get out with that dog, and don't come up with excuses as to why you can't. I mean, this is a COVID year. It's going to be a COVID year for a while. You're out there breathing good air out away from people. What a great opportunity to do something, that you can't, you're not going to be going to football games, and you're not going to be watching a lot of sports like you normally would. Get that pup out, get it experience, get it to know what it's like to bust through cover, hear the noises, and everything. It actually is the most fun you'll ever have. I mean, you'll have a lot of great times with that dog, but you'll never forget those early memories of when that dog its first is that it did. When you shoot that first bird. And by the way, I do highly recommend, if you have not shot many birds over or any over that dog, of course you're going to have to do that ahead of time, but I always, in the beginning of the season, I'll carry a dead bird in my vest. I'll freeze it at home and thaw it out for that pup when it makes that first point. And here they come up, and you've missed, and you have nothing to show because you're so nervous that you've got to shoot that first bird for that dog. I'll toss out a thawed out bird out of my vest for that pup. I like to give them some kind of reward for that. You don't want to miss that.
That's a great tip.
Well, you don't want to miss that connection that dog makes. It's all instinctual, but it happens where a dog doesn't sit there and take notes over what just happened. It just worked out for it, and it's just a good backup plan, because you're going to miss that bird because it's the most important bird you can shoot, and you're going to miss it. So. Yeah,
that's a good point.
And and hunt with other people and their dogs, and just expose that dog, that pup. You will not have a greater time than that first season with that pup. You'll write stories and books about it. You'll never forget. I can remember each and every one. I've had a lot of puppies, and I can remember each and every one their first hunts out, their first season out.
In their first season.
And what they later became as adult dogs as a result of it. Like I said, that 16-month-old dog I'm talking about, he probably had 30 to 40 days in Montana hunting. And then we hunted him in Nevada and in Oregon. But so critical. I mean, he's the dog he is because of that.
What's something that we should try to avoid that could set our dogs back this season?
not exposing that dog properly to gunshot, and don't base it on the fact that your first dog didn't need it, because they're all different and unique in their own ways. And I've heard of dogs being gun shy because a guy went out because his last dog didn't need it when his 4 buddies and him shot a pheasant. Why does this one need it? And it's pretty critical to make sure that puppy is ready. And you don't want to overdo a puppy. The younger they are, the less time in the field they can be. And don't be disappointed if your puppy can only manage an hour. It's too hot. A young dog shouldn't be over-exercised. I think that's pretty important. They don't make a whole day event. Just an hour or 2 on a young dog. And I mean, I'm talking about 4 or 5 months old, 6 months old, shouldn't have a whole lot of time in the field, especially even climbing, into heavy rock and steep slopes.
Right.
Make sure you kind of park in an area where you can bring the pup back and change out dogs, or you'll have problems as adults later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all make mistakes, and sometimes we get wrapped up in the excitement of all that. Sometimes at least I know, I forget some obvious things that I should have done, like leaving town and forgetting to fill your tank up with gas. So it's and so it's if you're in that situation, you're going to have to make the best out of a situation as you can, and that's pretty creative. I mean, that could work, but you'll know right away if you made a mistake, and then you might spend a long time fixing, and it's all fixable if you want to put the time and commitment into it. But that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Puppy 101.
And yeah, for sure. And you're going to be at the, 2022 Invitational in New Mexico, hopefully?
Well, I have a dog qualified for the 2021. I'm trying to get it. I'm going to test a dog in 5 days for another opportunity. And
awesome.
I'm going to rely on friends to help me train for it, because I don't know how to train for the Invitational. And if I can figure it out in time, I will go early, and I hope to qualify other dogs for the 2022 in New Mexico.
Awesome. So you're gonna run in Iowa next year then?
I'm sure giving it some thought.
Right? Yeah. Well, because don't you have the option, if you qualify this year, you have the option to do Iowa or New Mexico. Is that right?
Correct. But if you fail in Iowa, you can't decide to go to Mexico.
Right.
You have to requalify your dog. I know it's a whole different skill set in teaching the dogs. It's the elite title. Who wouldn't want to go for it? Yeah. And you've got to be prepared mentally that the first time you go or two doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You're going to have to take the falls if it doesn't work out, because you only have that one time, right? I mean, that one day to make it right. So
the whole day. It's a whole day.
I know. A different part. That's a whole big different part about AKC and NAVHDA. So you might have to do it more times in AKC, but in NAVHDA, it's one long day. And because if a dog doesn't pass it, doesn't mean that it's not going to be a fantastic dog. It's just that you got to get that dog at that particular moment in its life where it is, together. You've got it a complete package. And it's not always, they're flesh and bone, and blood. They definitely can surprise you. I've certainly had my big surprise moments.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure hoping that I get to participate in that. It's, if anything, excellent. I will have a better trained dog as a result of just preparing for it.
Yeah. Yep. And so much of it is obedience and that cooperation aspect at that point.
I always heard the wire hairs were more immature breed and needed more time to develop before you could do certain things. So I always took that to heart. And I'm not so convinced. It's an individuality, really. And you can try things out and just see where you can go with it, but don't put yourself in a goal set that you're going to have this accomplished by the end of spring. And then so you can run your dog in this or be ready for this. They all come along at different times. And that's pretty important to recognize that and stop and do something different instead of pushing that dog. NAVHDA tends to, I think, train way too young. And I've seen a fallout with dogs that it happens in field trial world too. I shouldn't say that, but your normal hunter probably isn't going to push that dog to that degree. Is hard.
Right. I think we've all been to those training days, and we all know those people that are trying to go for that. I don't know, what is it? The youngest, yep. Whatever. Or they just want to finish dog really young. And we were just talking about that the other day of, the one of them that we know of is on the 4th dog now, where it's a utility prize 1 before it's 2 years old. And not one dog before that. I think one actually went to the invitational and didn't pass,
wow.
But typically they're fizzling out during that invitational training.
Because they've reached that age where they start to question.
Yeah. Because, when they're young, they're learning, they're cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to be that age where they've had so much pressure on them at such a young age, and they're fizzled out. And it's, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I don't understand the concept of pushing so quick, so soon.
I know it. And I think you're really right on that. I think it's the maturity level of that dog. When it reaches that, then they start resisting some of the training, and you have fallouts in other areas that you didn't have before. I suppose it's like comparing a child that's, turning 13, 14 years old or something like that. They start to figure out things a little differently. They're not so interested in doing their chores at home, taking out the garbage and, meet curfew and stuff like that. They start to challenge you a little bit, and as they matured. I know that in NAVHDA, it seems like they do tend to want to be the youngest and the first. And I look at when the dog is ready. I'm doing stuff with a 16-month-old that kind of frightens me because I've never done it. And I'm not having any fallout at this time. But so I basically stopped. I stopped him at a point where he's doing an awesome job in flyaway. I'm just not knocking the birds down. I'm just flying them off. And he's just steady as a rock through all that. Now, as I approach hunting season, do I really want to put that pressure on him and start dropping birds and getting him steady for the fall? Or do I just give him another good hunting season, let him grow up a little more, and start that in the spring? Why start something, stop it, let it happen, during hunting season, and then try to pick it up later? I'm not going to do that to this dog. I'm just going to let him. I think it's important dogs have at least 2 good seasons, if not a lot of high obedience, high level. I think that they need to mature regardless of the breed. But again, you see some really successful dogs as 2-year-olds out there doing a great job. So, but sometimes they fall apart when they're 4 years old.
Right. Have you seen that? Because I feel like too, there's so much more. I shouldn't say so much more, but there's a lot of pressure in field trials because it's a competitive venue that I feel like that's where we see them more often being pushed young. Yep. Do you agree?
I do. As a matter of fact, I got great advice from Bob Pettick, who's a American field professional handler, and it was his career. He's now retired, but I learned a lot from that man. He wrote a book, great book, but he said that he could pretty much make any dog that had that potential into a field trial champion at 2 years old. but probably is going to deteriorate pretty heavily at 3 to 4. And, and I've actually seen that myself in dogs that did really well as young dogs and then just kind of fell apart. And I mean, maybe it's like a kid that never got a chance to be a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's important in dog world too.
So what are when you say fall apart, what are some of the characteristics you see there? Because when I've seen it, it's, they start mouthing the bird again, even though
Yes.
or they're peeing on the bird, or they're trying to bury the bird on the way back on the retrieve.
Or they don't
and they have the side of it, or they won't. Yeah. They refuse.
They'll run off with it. They'll bury it. Yeah.
Right. So in the field trial world, what are some of the characteristics you see when they shut down?
They break. They don't hold point through the even the flush. They don't listen to their handlers. They start running off. And these were like perfect puppies, perfect little dogs. And you thought, oh my gosh, how lucky to get one of those kind of dogs. And then some of them, as they grow older, it's not even resemble the same dog. And you're right, mouthing the bird is a really big deal, to them. Plucking it, running off with it, and destroying that bird is often a sign.
And in exchange for that, dogs that aren't broke out or taken to advanced training when they should have been, if they've left to run unruly. And because I did a podcast with Meredith Mays, and she had mentioned, she said, I would never run a dog in a juvenile stake because of all the bad habits they get. And when they're out there competing as derby dogs because they can compete until they're...
In AKC, they can go to 2 years old.
Yeah, so 2 years old, and they're being allowed to... So they have to point the birds in derby, and then when the bird flushes, you cap your gun, and they are allowed to chase. So 2-year-olds that are competing to be top derby dogs are chasing birds at that age.
And getting very successful in catching the bird.
Yeah.
And then running off with the bird. And then you have the handler chasing the dog down, trying to get the bird back.
And then how difficult is it? I mean, how often are those top derby dogs turning out to be good gun dogs?
Not often. Not often.
Yeah.
And sometimes the dogs that become derby dog of the year fizzle out. They can't get them broke out unless they put a lot of money and a lot of time into them. But people get excited with their pups and they have some success. And I always tell people, I train with quite a village of people. When you train NAVHDA, you do your initial breaking out by yourself, but then you need your village of people to be training with. But I always tell people that my biggest, weakest, hardest part that I fight a lot of is in training is knowing when to stop. When do you stop that day in that training level, or at that level for what you're after, and knowing when to give those breaks. Well, my solution was to get more dogs. So I can't overtrain, right? So I'm not out there running all these dogs because I don't have enough time in the day to do that. But that's really, really the hard part. And running puppy and derby, it's all fun. I mean, there's nothing really structured hard about it other than keeping your dog on the course and getting it to run out there. And it's a lot of fun. You get success. It kind of goes to your head. You keep running it. And then pretty soon you have a dog that is not as trainable. Some of the easiest dogs I've trained are dogs that weren't exposed to any of that kind of stuff.
Right. Because you're starting with a clean slate.
Yep.
And I think it's not a novice mistake either, because I think it's people that have been competing. I think some that I even know that have been competing the longest that, are running derby dogs till they're 2 years old and then struggling to get them broke out. So, because we question, well, how am I going to be able to recognize when this dog is ready to be broke? And I do think, like you mentioned earlier, that comes with more experience with every dog you've trained to be able to recognize that. But we're trying to play all these games in the off season, and you just have to wonder how much of it is helping or hurting.
Right. In field trialing, and actually in a lot of competitive sports, honestly, if people were truthful with themselves, you'd find out you need a pretty big ego to do this. An ego for your dog, an ego for yourself in training. And sometimes we just keep stepping over ourselves on all that. It becomes less focus on what your final goal is. I mean, I use a lot of these events. Do I have a better bird dog? That's always been my goal, is to have a better bird dog, as best it can be. Not the best in the world, but the best that dog can be. That is always my ultimate goal. So it depends what people's focus are. When they get a derby dog or a puppy dog and they get, they continue to win over points that they don't need, but they end up winning so much that they get the top rank. If you looked at the stats, you'd find not many of those dogs continue on, even as good hunting dogs. Because people just had this ego, they just didn't know when to stop with their dog. And that's hard, really. When you get wrapped up into that, it's hard. You have a lot of people telling you what a great dog you have, and you just got to keep going out there to see it for yourself. Right. And Meredith is very wise about her comment on that, because that's very true.
Yeah.
Yep. I'd like to see in fraternity dogs too. And it can apply to horses and everything else, when you've got the, to bet on the unknown, the young. So.
Yeah. Some of those race horses, you think of what they were doing, being pushed at the young age, and then they physically break down.
Right. And I think dogs physically break down too. I hunted so much, and even with a full-time job, I hunted every available day, and average year would be maybe 40 days out in the field, but that's a lot when you consider that's my busiest work season as well. So I'm trying to get out there as much as possible, but I find I do better with more dogs, because if you have one dog, I mean, there's some real strong benefits to it, but you're also hard on that dog, hard on its joints. And it's going to be a great dog for a long time. But if you're fortunate, the dog lives a long time, and it has to carry out those joints and torn ligaments its whole life long. And you can have some pretty crippled dogs. And my earlier dogs were pretty crippled. They love doing it, and you just get wrapped up into it. Nothing wrong with having a few more and rotating.
Get more dogs. Great
Get
advice.
More dogs. You can never have too many dogs. It's okay for guys to have too many shotguns. Not in their minds. There's never too many shotguns. Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I feel about dogs.
Yeah. Meg, if you had to add one more breed to your group, or one dog, just one dog, but a different breed, what would it be?
Of a sporting breed?
Yeah.
Well, this probably won't surprise you, but probably a setter.
I totally thought you were going to say Bronco.
Oh, I know it. That would have been my third.
Okay.
Dog.
Okay. All right. So tell me why the setter.
That big old fuzzy tail.
Yeah.
That high fuzzy tail. I mean, how exciting is I guess that's just
the pretty thing.
A thing of mine. A pretty thing. Seeing that high tail up there. They are soft. They are a little bit more challenging at times to train, but will I have one? Probably not. Because I'm going to get a Bronco, right? So that's an interesting breed. I want to hear an episode talking about that breed.
About the Bronco?
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be an episode about the Bronco.
That's right. I'll tell you
they're a
what,
pretty
they are
interesting
full
breed.
of personality, and I got to meet yours, and they are fabulous. And if nobody has seen, they will never appreciate that gait unless you see it in the flesh.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable watching those. If you like watching gaits, if you like watching a gaited horse go, and watching those guys fly in midair like that, I just don't know how they do that.
It's a pretty thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
Is.
And they don't look like it when you look at the dog, that it's got this graceful movement in it. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of their heads.
No, they look like clunky dogs, don't they? Like just, I would say clunky. Yeah.
Right.
Uncoordinated and clunky. And when they move around the house, they do everything goofy. But yeah.
But when you see them striding down that field and they go into that, I don't know, kind of flying through air. It's
flying trot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that what they call it?
It is. Yeah.
Trot? Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, it's a jaw-dropping event. It really is. It's a real treat. And I want to hunt behind one this year. So I have not done that.
We'll have to make that happen. It definitely makes for an enjoyable day if you haven't even gotten any birds, that at least if you can appreciate the dog.
Yes.
If the dog is the most important piece for you out in that field, like it is for me and you, and not the birds, then yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what is your third favorite dog? I know what your first two are.
I'd love to add a field bred cocker to the group.
Oh,
I really
would.
Oh yeah. It'd be for these grouse woods here. If I could get one that I could just drop down in that cover, it would be really nice.
That's a whole different training skill set, isn't it? Going to a flusher.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I want to work behind some more. I've only hunted over a couple when I was in the UK and went on a couple hunts. And I really enjoyed them over there and how they worked with the pointing dogs. But I want to see a couple more here in the US and see how they work and the training going into them before I make the dive. But it's definitely something that's intriguing to me.
I think that's great. And I think that would make a great segment talking about your experiences and how they hunt abroad. I mean, it's some things the same, some things quite different.
Yeah, it would be. It's very traditional over there. And I guess I think of it as traditional. For them, it's normal. It's how they do it.
Right.
Everything from the gamekeepers, they carry their game in those leather harnesses. It's all very beautiful. Even in their field trials, they hold that tradition there.
I mean, I would love to just go abroad and see how they do hunt. I mean, they're the first to come up with this, right? I mean, their ancestry hunted before they had shotguns, right? So they use dogs for stalking, not for pointing.
Right. Yeah. And just their care for game, their care for tradition. It's just, it's different.
We have a lot to learn. We have a lot, and I don't want to lose that art because that's pretty special. And it's good that we have people that do that in the U.S. to keep that alive. I lived in Germany for a couple of years, so I do remember, even though we were on air bases, we always went to the gun clubs and we always got a chance to see some of that. And it was some of my earlier exposure. And it is pretty neat.
Yep. I agree. All right, Meg.
Well, fun.
It has been fun, and I really appreciate you coming on. We can talk for many more hours because usually our conversations do last that, and I love learning from you and picking your brain. So I'm excited to get together with you this fall and go on a hunt together, at least one.
I'm totally expecting it. And I will be so disappointed if it doesn't happen.
And I'll be sure to bring a Bronco with.
Or I'm not coming. Okay.
Deal. All right. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Bird Dog Babe podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something from the content, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whichever platform you're listening from. Check out the show notes for links to references from this episode, as well as info on how to connect through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're loving this podcast and want to support the production and content, please consider becoming one of my Patreon patrons. Being a patron connects us more on a personal level, where I'm able to help answer questions and give advice. My husband William and I have bred, owned, and trained AKC Master Hunters, Field Champions, NAVHDA VCs, and AKC Show Champions. We're excited to not only share what we've learned, but also listen from previous and future episode guests for additional content. Go to patreon.com/thebirddogbabe and $5 per month and you're in. And as always, 2% goes to conservation. Until next week, bird dog babes, keep them versatile.